The atmosphere is heavy with unspoken tension as the man leans in, his face partially shrouded in shadow. A sharp, knowing smirk plays across his lips, a look that is as charming as it is dangerous. His dark hair falls over his eyes, masking with full expression, but the confidence in his posture suggests he has gained the upper hand in this psychological game of cat and mouse. With a cold, decisive tone, he delivers a final warning that echoes through the room. The speech bubble looms large. Just so we're clear, I gave you one last chance to stop. The visual focus shifts to the woman's bare leg and the stark positioning of their bodies, emphasizing that the boundaries of their professional or casual relationship have just been irrevocably crossed. The city lights blur in the background, making the world outside feel distant and irrelevant. The final perspective is a dramatic, wide-angle shot that captures the full scale of their interaction. He has her pinned against a surface, his hand firmly gripping her wrist, while his other hand tilts her chin upward, forcing her to meet his eyes. The physical power dynamic is undeniable. They are locked in a silent battle of wills, where the air is thick with anticipation, and the time for talking has finally come to an end. He moves closer still, his gaze fixed intensely on her. He calls her by name, Miss Se-young, his voice lightly a low murmur that vibrates in the small space between them. He reminds her of her own agency in this moment, stating firmly, "You're the one who turned it down." He is placing the weight of the upcoming consequences squarely on her shoulders, highlighting that she had the opportunity to walk away, but chose to stay. The camera zooms in on their faces, capturing the raw electricity of the encounter. So-yeon's face is flushed with a deep crimson blush, her eyes wide as she looks up at him, trapped between hesitation and desire. He hovers just inches from her lips, his expression softened by a triumphant yet intimate gaze. The soft lighting catches the shimmer of her floral earring, adding a touch of elegance to the high-stakes vulnerability of the scene. The man leans down, burying his face into the crook of her neck. The soft sound effect, chew, indicates a gentle yet deliberate kiss against her skin, drawing a startled gasp, "Ah!" from the woman. Her hand rests tentatively on his shoulder, her fingers curling slightly into the fabric of his shirt as she reacts to the sudden warmth of his breath against her. The physical contact deepens as a hand begins to slide slowly and purposefully across her skin. This tactical movement, accompanied by the word kiss, suggests a rhythmic progression of affection that is both captivating and overwhelming. Every touch is calculated to test the remaining boundaries of her resolve. Overwhelmed by the intensity of his proximity, the woman's body reacts instinctively with a visible flinch. Her eyes widen in a mix of surprise and rising heat, her face flushed a deep pink. She looks on with a stunned expression, indicated by the silent exclamation bubble, X, as the reality of his boldness fully sinks in. In a moment of internal panic, her thoughts race. The jagged, electrified thought bubbles scream, "Wait!" and "His hand!" as she realizes exactly where his touch is wandering. The scene focuses on the psychological weight of the moment, where her mind struggles to keep up with the physical sensations of the encounter. The sequence reaches a peak of physical intimacy as his hand finally comes to rest firmly against the bare skin of her thigh. The contrast between his pale hand and her skin is sharp, framed against the soft, out-of-focus city lights in the background. This gesture is possessive and final, leaving no room for doubt about his intentions or the direction the night is headed. The scene opens with a heavy atmosphere of intimacy and internal conflict. A man lies over a woman, his head tucked against her shoulder, while she stares blankly upward with a flush of intoxication on her cheeks. His thoughts are clouded by a specific memory. She said it's hard for her to do this sober. This realization hangs over him, suggesting that their closeness is fueled more by liquid courage than genuine readiness, adding a layer of melancholy to the moment. The perspective shifts to an extreme close-up of the moment their lips meet. The sound effect, chew, a soft, light kissing sound, accompanies the visual. It is a brief but impactful contact, a peck that marks the transition from hesitation to action. The soft pink hues and delicate line work highlight the gentleness of this initial touch. The tension breaks with a sudden, decisive movement. The frame focuses tightly on the woman's eye, which is wide with surprise. Above her, the bold onomatopoeia, press, appears, signaling that the man has moved closer, closing the physical gap between them. The sharp lines in the background emphasize the suddenness of his advance, catching her completely off guard as he leans in. As the kiss deepens, the woman's reaction is one of visible shock. Her eyes are wide open, fixed on the man who is now hovering inches from her face. A speech bubble containing muffled against his lips shows her breathlessness and surprise. Her hand rests tentatively on his shoulder, caught between pulling him closer or pushing him away as she processes the sudden intensity of the encounter. Finally, the shock begins to fade, replaced by a soft, hazy acceptance. Her eyes droop half-closed, losing their startled edge as she begins to sink into the kiss. A small, quiet moan, escapes her, drifting into the air. The man continues to lean over her, his dark hair contrasting against her vibrant red locks as the two of them become lost in the quiet, heated intimacy of the bedroom. The intensity of their connection deepens, overwhelming her senses. Her eyes are squeezed shut, her long lashes brushing against her flushed cheeks, which are now a deep, vibrant pink. In the quiet of her mind, she is flooded with a thought of pure vulnerability. I've never felt this before. This admission highlights her internal transition from drunken hesitation to a raw, genuine emotional discovery. The sheer force of her newfound feelings manifests in a sudden, involuntary physical reaction. The frame focuses on her foot, which is tensed and arched sharply against the bedding. The word flinch floats above it in a soft pink script, surrounded by dynamic motion lines that emphasize the suddenness of the movement. This small detail captures the involuntary electricity coursing through her body as the intimacy escalates. Caught in a whirlwind of sensation, her hand instinctively reaches out for something to hold on to. Her fingers press firmly against the fabric of the man's shirt, the word press appearing in bold to signal the strength of her grip. A small, breathless gasp, escapes her lips, filling the speech bubble above as she struggles to anchor herself amidst the overwhelming waves of emotion. As the moment lingers, her hand remains clutched against his chest, but the grip begins to falter into a delicate tremble. Squiggly lines around her fingers indicate a visible shake, showing just how deeply affected she is by his proximity. The contrast between her pale, trembling hand and the stark lines of his shirt creates a visual representation of her vulnerability and the height of the tension between them. Finally, the man pulls back slightly, the heavy atmosphere broken by a long, weary sigh. He hovers just above her, his profile sharp and his expression unreadable as he exhales. Below him, she remains flushed and dazed, her mouth slightly parted as she stares up at him. This breath marks a momentary pause in their physical encounter, leaving the air thick with unspoken words and the lingering heat of their shared moment. The scene opens with a close-up of the woman lying against the white sheets, her long, wavy auburn hair fanning out around her. Her face is flushed with a deep crimson hue, and her eyes carry a look of dazed confusion and vulnerability. A soft, escapes her lips, depicted in a small speech bubble as she tries to process the intensity of the moment. The air around her seems to shimmer with soft light and floating sparkles, emphasizing the heightened emotional atmosphere. As the tension escalates, the perspective shifts slightly. The woman is clearly overwhelmed, her internal monologue revealing her racing thoughts. "This is all too fast," she thinks to herself, her breath hitching once again. She begins to ask a question, who, as if trying to make sense of the person before her or the words that were just spoken, but her thoughts are interrupted by the sheer speed of the unfolding events. The focus narrows in on the man's profile. His mouth is slightly parted, as if he is about to speak or has just let out a heavy breath. The sharp line of his jaw and the shadow falling over his face create a sense of mystery and intensity. This extreme close-up highlights the intimate proximity between the two characters, where even the smallest movement or sound carries significant weight. The camera pulls back to a wide shot, showing the man leaning over the woman on the bed, pulling her into a sudden, forceful hug. He is dressed in a formal white button-down shirt and black trousers, his back to the viewer as he buries his face in her neck. The woman looks startled, her eyes wide as she is pressed into the mattress. Above them, a large speech bubble contains the man's demanding or surprised question. "On earth said that to you?" The final frame maintains the wide shot of their intertwined figures on the bed. The woman's legs are visible, highlighting her small frame compared to his. The man remains hunched over her, gripping the sheets, while the woman is left in a state of complete shock. A single large speech bubble at the bottom of the frame captures her total bewilderment. "What?" The scene ends on this cliffhanger, leaving the nature of their conversation and the reason for his sudden outburst hanging in the air. The atmosphere in the room shifts from shock to a simmering, quiet intensity as the man remains hovered over her. His movements create a soft rustle against the bedsheets. The woman, her face still dusted with a soft pink blush, looks up at him with wide, searching eyes. He speaks in a low, steady voice, reminding her of their shared history. "You told me yourself," he says, grounding the chaotic moment in a truth she had once shared with him. The narrative voice turns internal and reflective through large, overlapping speech bubbles. He recounts her words with a hint of irony, that someone once called you cold as stone. However, his next words carry a heavy emotional weight, challenging that perception entirely. With a subtle, invisible smirk that can be felt in his tone, he adds, "They couldn't have been more wrong." This revelation hangs in the air, stripping away the cold facade she often presents to the world. The camera pulls back to reveal the full, breathtaking proximity of the two. The man has moved even closer, his large frame nearly enveloping hers as he pins her gently against the pillows. His dark hair falls forward as he stares down at her with an expression that is both commanding and deeply intimate. Beneath him, the woman is a picture of stunned vulnerability. Her hands are raised slightly, as if unsure whether to push him away or pull him closer, her eyes locked onto his in a moment of pure, raw connection. The focus shifts back to the woman's face, which is now completely flushed with a vibrant blush that spreads across her cheeks and ears. She looks dazed, her lips slightly parted in a silent gasp as she tries to process his intense gaze. Above her, his voice cuts through the silence once more, soft yet challenging, as he asks the final, piercing question. "Don't you agree?" The question is a trap, a plea, and a demand all at once. Finally, the scene narrows down to an extreme close-up of the man's eye. His gaze is sharp, dark, and unwavering, filled with a depth of emotion that words cannot fully capture. The subtle narrowing of his eyelid and the slight shadow over his iris suggest a man who is seeing exactly what he wants, a woman who is anything but stone. This intense, singular focus brings the tension to a boiling point, leaving the reader breathless for her response.